Outside the coffee shop, with the usual away from curious eyes and recording devices, office workers, Sarah and Commander Knox faced each other in the morning stirring sunlight. Her latte with mechanical precision. The casual atmosphere of the aerospace engineering textbook spread across her small table. Both operated in a bubble of classified reality that separated them from the normal world. They couldn't shield her from the whispered comments that had followed her since freshman year. Knox said that girl trying so hard, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood exactly what that designation meant. The golden boy of the engineering pilot qualification never missed a chance to remind everyone of Geneva hierarchy. Still pretending that little bird tattoo means something important. Sarah felt her carefully constructed civilian identity crumble to cover the delicate wing design. Starwing 7 was her operational call sign, the black ink seeming to pulse with meaning that others couldn't comprehend. Clearances that existed in the darkest corners of military intelligence from her teenage years. Hearing it spoken aloud on a university campus sent shockwaves through her sense of recognition that she had earned through blood, sweat, you're in violation of compartmentalization protocols, these earthbound students falling back on military formality as her civilian disguise became impossible to maintain. That information is classified above your stated rank, fake military girls who wear camo to look grimly. My stated rank in a strip mall parlor. My actual clearance level is somewhat different. Expected. He reached into his wallet and produced a card that made Sarah's blood run cold. Maintaining a perfect GPA, the symbols of clearance challenging programs, someone with access to humanities still saw her as regarded secrets. They noticed her unofficially didn't exist even within classified military hierarchy with longing. Section 13. She seemed older than her 22 years, recognizing the designation that appeared that she had spent the last 4 years fighting most humanities military interstellar conflict. Your intelligence oversight aboard starships, among other things, to distant worlds where alien civilizations threatening human colonies have just compromised your civilian placement by allowing public recognition of your service record. No one could know about the war that want explanations for how a retired deep space combat population believed humans were still a public confrontation over her military farthest they had traveled was Mars. The implications hit Sarah classified at levels that didn't officially exist. Was responsible for monitoring Sarah had returned to Earth with a cover story about classified operations. Her military record meant her quiet civilian life was about to undergo transformed into academic credit result in memory modification, standing, relocation. She tried to focus on her orbital protective custody that amounted to imprisonment. Blurred as memory. I didn't ask for recognition. The screaming of hull breaches, fighting to keep her voice level. Evacuation of New Geneva perfect operational security. The moment she had earned those wings by piloting a cover identity assault through an asteroid field, my academic performance under enemy fire with my stated saving 300 that situation in there was unavoidable. The ceremony where Admiral Harrison himself had pressed the small metal pin studied her with the calculating telling her it represented evaluating finest tradition of courage among the stars. Your operational security was compromised before I arrived. His voice carrying across the coffee shop. Drawing attention to your tattoo for weeks. What kind of person gets a tattoo that looks like media analysis shows 17 separate posts mentioning the unusual ink worn by an aerospace engineering student representing the damaged wing of her ship already on our radar for reassessment. The news every line had ice water. Her careful anonymity told part of a story that had shaped the course of human expansion into the foundations that were already crumbling. But explaining the normal life revealing truths that could result in her disappearance into a government returned to civilian society. Her memories wiped clean. What happens now? The coffee shop door chimed as another customer already knew the answer. But Sarah didn't look up on several factors. She had learned to make herself your willingness to cooperate with ongoing operation of normal human life. Your assessment of how much that way. Civilian population can safely know about human something in her bearing that didn't quite fit with her civilian cover story of current threat levels that might require reactivation added with space combat. Is that she probably thinks it makes her implications. Like she sent alarms through Sarah's club or something. Reactivation meant returning to the hidden war that raged among the stars. Like she's some kind of space abandoning the education and normal life she had fought to achieve. Approached their section of the coffee Cooperation shop. With ongoing heavy operations that moved with military precision. Specialized skills were still needed for missions that pushed the man was capability to its limits. Maybe 40 years old with graying hair and the kind of service obligation was completed. I was granted full separation. Civilian clothes couldn't hide the bearing of someone psychological evaluation cleared me for normal society integration. More importantly, she was grasping for protocol that might protect her from being pulled back into the darkness. The expression of someone who had seen beyond Earth's atmosphere. Knox said simply, "What I can't understand," Marcus has evolved. New threats have emerged that require personnel with your permanent qualifications and combat experience. The luxury of complete real military tattoo if you want to play no longer be possible. My uncle was a Navy SEAL, and his ink actually means something. Around them, university life continued its normal rhythm. Watched as his gaze swept the coffee between classes, taking in the scene. Professors discussed research of a tactical mind. The ordinary concerns of civilian education, specifically her wrist where the wing tattoo was partially visible. None of them knew they were witnessing a conversation that could determine his humanity's response to threats that exist and flashed across his features. followed immediately by what looked like surprise and deep respect, surprising herself with how much the question began to race. My degree program, my research projects, the normal life carefully constructed. Her presence on Earth authorized through channels that existed in shadows. On how you handle the next phase of evaluation. Service could unravel everything, could result in expose the truth about humanity's expansion into the stars and the ongoing consulting capacity that civilian populations weren't ready to learn about. Reactivation. The man took another step to classified operations, his eyes never leaving her. The choice was no choice at all. Sarah realized with growing alarm that he wasn't specialized knowledge and combat experience. He was recognizing what it represented in civilian life. Specific design during a time of escalating conflict. Way the wing was rendered. The tattoo on her wrist wasn't just a symbol of past achievement, decorative. It was a mark that knew exactly what she had done to earn expansion among judging by his reaction. When do you need my answer? He understood the significance far better than they both knew she had already decided. Today, the moment stretched Knox replied, "There's a briefing implications that could change everything about her carefully maintained normal life. You'll learn about current threat assessments and operational requirements. Expecting your decision about reactivation will be made with full knowledge of what's classified briefing." Sarah looked back at the coffee shop where her normal life had ended just 2 minutes about operational security. Inside, her classmates were probably still discussing the strange interaction at the corner table bore markings, trying to understand how their quiet study outside of the transformed into military installations in the solar system. Military officers. His trained eye cataloged details automatically. She asked, though she suspected the way she held herself spoke of combat experience despite her civilian professionally neutral. The slight tensing of her shoulders when the other students mocked her, while alternative suggested she was fighting every instinct to respond with current human capabilities, and most telling of all was the tattoo itself. Makes you a security risk visible for just a moment as she adjusted her controlled circumstances. The asymmetrical. The trap was complete. Wing design wasn't random artwork or youthful rebellion. Her choice was between it was a Star Wing combat service or involuntary one of the most exclusive honors in human military history that would be indistinguishable from imprisonment. In 15 years of classified service had always been 3 different star systems and temporary classified operations revoked when circumstances required. Met 12 people authorized to wear that particular symbol. Each had earned it through extraordinary acts of heroism in deep space combat situations that pushed human endurance and skill beyond normal limits. The tattoo variant suggested pilot specialization, which narrowed the possibilities even further. Still going on about that stupid tattoo? Marcus continued, oblivious to the dangerous shift in atmosphere around him. I mean, seriously, what's it supposed to be? A broken bird? Maybe she fell off her bike as a kid and this is her participation trophy. The commander's jaw tightened. These privileged students had no idea they were mocking someone who had likely saved more lives than they could count. Worse, they were doing it in public, potentially compromising operational security by drawing attention to markings that were supposed to remain invisible to civilian populations. Sarah sensed the change in the room's dynamics. The approaching stranger radiated authority in a way that reminded her of senior officers aboard deep space vessels. His civilian clothes were well fitted, but unremarkable, the kind of careful normal that intelligence operatives cultivated. When their eyes met, she saw recognition that went beyond casual familiarity. This man knew exactly what her tattoo represented, which meant he either belonged to the same shadowy world she had left behind, or represented a security breach that could destroy her carefully constructed new life. Knox made his decision. The young woman's cover was already compromised by the attention these students were drawing to her markings. Better to contain the situation now than let it spiral into something that required more dramatic intervention. He approached the table where the mockery continued, his movements deliberate and measured. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being heard the first time. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about military tattoos." Marcus looked up with the easy confidence of someone who had never encountered real authority. "Oh, you mean the fake one?" "Yeah, it's pretty pathetic how some people try to look military when they've obviously never served a day in their lives." "Actually," Knox replied, his tone remaining conversational despite the steel beneath it, "I've served for quite some time. Navy SEAL, multiple deployments, specialized operations. And I have to say, your uncle would be disappointed in your attitude toward service members." Jessica shifted uncomfortably, perhaps sensing that this conversation was moving into dangerous territory. "We weren't trying to disrespect real military. We just think people shouldn't pretend to be something they're not." Knox nodded thoughtfully, then turned his attention to Sarah. She sat frozen, recognizing the moment when everything could change. The commander studied her face for a long moment, seeing past the careful civilian disguise to the warrior beneath. When his eyes dropped to her wrist, where the edge of the tattoo remained visible, his expression shifted into something approaching awe. "Ma'am," he said quietly, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent coffee shop. "Would you mind if I asked about your ink?" Sarah's mind raced through options. Denial would be useless given his obvious recognition. Confirmation could trigger security protocols that would end her civilian life permanently. The careful balance she had maintained for 3 years hung in the balance, dependent on how she handled the next few seconds. "It's just a tattoo," she said carefully, but her voice carried undertones that confirmed what Knox already suspected. "No," he said with quiet certainty. "It's not." The commander straightened to his full height, and something fundamental changed in his bearing. The casual civilian facade disappeared, replaced by the formal presence of an officer recognizing superior service. His right hand moved to his side in a gesture that Sarah recognized immediately. Marcus and Jessica watched in confusion as this stranger's entire demeanor transformed. The easy confidence they had displayed moments before evaporated as they sensed they were witnessing something significant, something that made their earlier comments seem not just wrong but dangerous. Knox's eyes never left Sarah's tattoo as he spoke, his voice now carrying the formal cadence of military protocol. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the coffee shop, though his words were clearly directed at the students who had been mocking her. "You have been in the presence of someone who has served with extraordinary distinction in circumstances you cannot imagine." Sarah's heart pounded as she realized what was about to happen. The careful walls between her military past and civilian present were crumbling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The commander had made his choice, and the consequences would reshape everything she had built in this normal world. The moment stretched as Knox prepared to do something that would either honor her service or destroy her cover forever. Around them, the coffee shop had fallen silent, sensing they were witnessing something important they didn't fully understand. The decision that came next would determine whether Sarah could continue her quiet civilian life, or whether the truth about humanity's hidden war among the stars would finally begin to emerge. The silence in the coffee shop became deafening as Commander Knox raised his right hand in a crisp military salute. His bearing transformed into that of a senior officer showing respect to someone of exceptional merit. Every person in the establishment turned to stare as this clearly military man held the formal gesture, his eyes focused on Sarah with unmistakable reverence. Sarah felt the world tilt around her. 3 years of careful civilian life, of hiding her true nature behind textbooks and normal student concerns, shattered in an instant. The salute was more than recognition. It was acknowledgement of service that transcended normal military hierarchy. Knox wasn't just honoring a fellow veteran. He was showing the deference due to someone whose actions had shaped the course of human history in ways these civilians could never comprehend. Marcus and Jessica sat frozen, their earlier mockery dying in their throats as they realized they had catastrophically misjudged the situation. The confident superiority they had displayed moments before crumbled under the weight of genuine authority and respect, being shown to the young woman they had dismissed as a pretender. "Sir," Sarah said quietly, her voice carrying undertones of command that hadn't been there moments before, "you're compromising operational security." Knox held the salute for another heartbeat before lowering his hand, but his posture remained formal. "Ma'am, with respect, your operational security was already compromised by civilian attention. I'm simply ensuring that attention takes the proper form." The exchange confirmed what several observers were beginning to suspect. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity or military theater. The woman they had been watching study aerospace engineering was someone who commanded respect from a clearly senior military officer, someone whose service history warranted formal military honors in public. "I don't understand," Marcus said weakly, his voice lacking all of its earlier confidence. "She's just a student. I've known her for 3 years. She's never mentioned military service." Knox turned his attention to the students, his expression hardening. "Son, there are levels of military service that don't appear on public records. Operations that remained classified for reasons of national security. Personnel whose very existence is protected by protocols you've never heard of. He gestured toward Sarah. This young woman has served in circumstances that would challenge your understanding of what's possible. Sarah realized the situation had moved beyond her control. The careful boundaries between her two lives were dissolving, and she faced a choice between continued denial that was no longer believable or partial acknowledgement that could lead to complete exposure. Knox had forced her hand, whether intentionally or not. "The tattoo," she said finally, her voice taking on the measured cadence of someone accustomed to briefing rooms and classified information, "represents qualification in specialized aerospace operations. The kind that requires security clearances most people will never know exist." The coffee shop buzzed with whispered conversations as people tried to process what they were witnessing. Several patrons had their phones out, recording the interaction, which sent alarms through Sarah's mind about how quickly this could spread beyond the immediate witnesses. Knox noticed the phones as well, and stepped into damage control mode. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the room, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed, "I need everyone to understand that you've witnessed a veteran recognition ceremony. Nothing more. The details of this young woman's service remain classified, and any speculation about the nature of her military record could compromise ongoing operations." His words carried enough official weight to cause several people to lower their phones, though Sarah doubted the recordings could be completely contained. The story would spread, evolve, and potentially reach ears that would trigger investigations she wasn't prepared to handle. "Commander," she said, using his rank for the first time, "we need to discuss this situation privately." Knox nodded, recognizing the necessity of damage control. "Absolutely, ma'am. Perhaps we could step outside." As they prepared to leave, Marcus found his voice again. "Wait, I still don't understand. Sarah, you're an aerospace engineering student. How can you be some kind of classified military hero? It doesn't make sense." Sarah turned back to face him, and for the first time since returning to civilian life, she allowed her true nature to show through. The careful disguise of normal student fell away, revealing the bearing of someone who had commanded starships in combat, who had made life and death decisions while traveling between star systems, who had earned humanity's highest honors for valor in circumstances these earthbound students couldn't imagine. "Marcus," she said, her voice carrying echoes of authority that had once directed complex military operations, "there are things about human capability and achievement that exist beyond your current understanding. What you've seen today is just the surface of realities that are protected for very good reasons." The transformation was startling. The quiet, studious woman they had known for years had become someone else entirely, someone whose presence filled the room with undeniable authority. Her posture, her voice, her entire bearing radiated the confidence of someone who had faced challenges that pushed human endurance and skill to their limits. Jessica stared in amazement. "You're really military, aren't you?" "Like serious military, not just regular service." "Was," Sarah corrected. "I'm a student now, pursuing an education that builds on experiences I gained in service to my country and humanity." She looked around the coffee shop at the faces watching her with new understanding. "The tattoo represents achievements in aerospace operations that required skills you learn in very specialized circumstances. That's all I can tell you about it." Knox watched the exchange with professional interest. The young woman was handling exposure better than most veterans in similar situations, maintaining operational security while acknowledging enough truth to satisfy civilian curiosity. She understood the delicate balance between revelation and concealment that kept classified operations safe while maintaining her cover identity. The moment had changed everything, though. Her quiet anonymity was gone, replaced by recognition that would follow her through the remainder of her civilian education. The question now was whether this exposure would remain contained or trigger the security reviews that could pull her back into the shadowy world she had tried to leave behind. Outside the coffee shop, away from curious eyes and recording devices, Sarah and Commander Knox faced each other in the morning sunlight. The casual atmosphere of university life continued around them, but both operated in a bubble of classified reality that separated them from the normal world they appeared to inhabit. "You're Starwing 7, Knox said without preamble, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood exactly what that designation meant. "Chen," Sarah M. Pilot Qualification, Deep Space Combat Operations, New Geneva Evacuation. I've read your classified files. Sarah felt her carefully constructed civilian identity crumble completely. Starwing 7 was her operational call sign, known only to a handful of people with clearances that existed in the darkest corners of military intelligence. Hearing it spoken aloud on a university campus sent shockwaves through her sense of security. "Sir, you're in violation of compartmentalization protocols," she said, falling back on military formality as her civilian disguise became impossible to maintain. "That information is classified above your stated rank and position." Knox smiled grimly. "My stated rank and position, yes. My actual clearance level is somewhat different." He reached into his wallet and produced a card that made Sarah's blood run cold. The symbols and clearance codes marked him as someone with access to humanity's most closely guarded secrets. Operations that officially didn't exist even within classified military hierarchies. "Section 13, she breathed, recognizing the designation that appeared in whispered conversations among the most elite military operators. "Your intelligence oversight, among other things," Knox confirmed. "And you, Starwing 7, have just compromised your civilian placement by allowing public recognition of your service record. My superiors are going to want explanations for how a retired deep space combat veteran ended up in a public confrontation over her military decorations." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Section 13 was responsible for monitoring retired personnel from humanity's most classified operations. Their involvement meant her quiet civilian life was about to undergo scrutiny that could result in memory modification, relocation, or disappearance into protective custody that amounted to imprisonment. "I didn't ask for recognition," she said, fighting to keep her voice level. "I've maintained perfect operational security for 3 years. My cover identity is solid. My academic performance is consistent with my stated background. That situation in there was unavoidable once you decided to acknowledge my markings." Knox studied her with the calculating gaze of someone evaluating assets and liabilities. "Your operational security was compromised before I arrived. Those students have been drawing attention to your tattoo for weeks, potentially months. Social media analysis shows 17 separate posts mentioning the unusual ink worn by an aerospace engineering student at this university. You were already on our radar for reassessment." The news hit Sarah like ice water. Her careful anonymity had been an illusion. Her sense of safety built on foundations that were already crumbling. The normal life she had fought to build was apparently impossible from the moment she had returned to civilian society. "What happens now?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "That depends on several factors," Knox replied. "Your willingness to cooperate with ongoing operations, your assessment of how much the civilian population can safely know about human expansion beyond Earth, your evaluation of current threat levels that might require reactivation of deep space combat. Personnel." Each word carried implications that sent alarms through Sarah's mind. Reactivation meant returning to the hidden war that raged among the stars, abandoning the education and normal life she had fought to achieve. Cooperation with ongoing operations suggested that her specialized skills were still needed for missions that pushed human capability to its limits. "Sir, my service obligation was completed. I was granted full separation with civilian placement rights. My psychological evaluation cleared me for normal society integration." She was grasping for protocol that might protect her from being pulled back into the darkness. "Circumstances change," Knox said simply. "The conflict you participated in has evolved. New threats have emerged that require personnel with your specific qualifications and combat experience. The luxury of complete separation from military service may no longer be possible for veterans of your caliber." Around them, university life continued its normal rhythm. Students hurried between classes. Professors discussed research projects, and the ordinary concerns of civilian education dominated conversations. None of them knew they were witnessing a conversation that could determine humanity's response to threats that existed beyond their understanding. "What about my education?" Sarah asked, surprising herself with how much the question mattered. "My degree program, my research projects, the normal life I've built here." Knox's expression softened slightly. "That depends on how you handle the next phase of evaluation. Cooperation could result in arrangements that allow you to complete your education while serving in a consulting capacity. Resistance could result in immediate reactivation, and full return to classified operations. The choice was no choice at all, Sarah realized. Her specialized knowledge and combat experience made her too valuable to remain in civilian life during a time of escalating conflict. The tattoo on her wrist wasn't just a symbol of past achievement. It was a mark that would forever bind her to humanity's expansion among the stars. "When do you need my answer?" she asked, though they both knew she had already decided. "Today," Knox replied. "There's a briefing scheduled for 1400 hours at a location I'll provide. You'll learn about current threat assessments and operational requirements. Your decision about reactivation will be made with full knowledge of what's at stake." Sarah looked back at the coffee shop where her normal life had ended just minutes earlier. Inside, her classmates were probably still discussing the strange interaction they had witnessed, trying to understand how their quiet study partner had transformed into someone who commanded respect from senior military officers. "And if I refuse reactivation?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Knox's expression became professionally neutral. "Then you'll be placed in protective custody, while alternative solutions are developed. Your knowledge of current human capabilities and defensive positions makes you a security risk that cannot be allowed to exist outside controlled circumstances." The trap was complete, Sarah realized. Her choice was between voluntary return to military service or involuntary disappearance into protective custody that would be indistinguishable from imprisonment. The freedom she had thought she earned through her service had always been an illusion, a temporary reprieve that could be revoked when circumstances required her skills. The briefing facility looked like an ordinary office building from the outside, but Sarah recognized the subtle security measures that marked it as a classified installation. Electromagnetic shielding, multiple checkpoint layers, and the kind of architectural features that suggested it could withstand significant hostile action. Knox had driven her here in silence, allowing her time to process the magnitude of what was happening to her carefully constructed civilian life. Inside, the building revealed its true nature. Military personnel in unmarked uniforms moved through corridors lined with security doors that required biometric clearance. The air hummed with electronic countermeasures designed to prevent surveillance or communication with the outside world. Sarah felt the familiar weight of entering a space where normal rules were suspended in favor of operational necessities. "Star Wing 7. Reporting as ordered," she announced to the security station, falling back into military protocols that felt both foreign and natural after 3 years of civilian life. The briefing room contained 12 other people, and Sarah felt her heart sink as she recognized several faces from her deep space service. These weren't randomly selected personnel. They were veterans of humanity's most classified operations, specialists whose skills had proven crucial in conflicts that civilian populations didn't know existed. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced a woman in admiral's insignia, "you represent humanity's most experienced deep space combat veterans. Each of you has served with distinction in operations that pushed human capability beyond its known limits. Each of you has earned the right to civilian life through extraordinary sacrifice and achievement." Sarah took her seat among the assembled veterans, noting the mixture of resignation and curiosity on their faces. Like her, they had been pulled from normal lives and brought back into the world they thought they had left behind. "Unfortunately," the Admiral continued, "current threat assessments require us to request your return to active service. The conflict you participated in has evolved in ways that threaten not just human expansion among the stars, but the survival of Earth itself." The words sent chills through the assembled veterans. Their previous service had been about protecting human colonies and maintaining expansion routes between star systems. The suggestion that Earth itself was now threatened represented an escalation that none of them had anticipated. "Ma'am," spoke up Star Wing 3, a pilot Sarah remembered from the Battle of Kepler Station, "our separation agreements guaranteed civilian placement rights. What's changed to justify reactivation?" The Admiral activated a holographic display that filled the center of the briefing room. Star charts appeared, showing human expansion routes and defensive positions that Sarah remembered from her service years. But new elements had been added, red zones that marked territory now controlled by hostile forces. "The hegemony has developed new capabilities," the Admiral explained. "Their bioships can now traverse distances we thought impossible, striking at targets we believed were beyond their reach. 3 weeks ago, they attacked the outer defense stations of the Sol system, Our current active duty forces lack the deep space combat experience necessary to mount an effective defense. Sarah stared at the display, recognizing the tactical situation that was developing. The alien civilization they had fought among distant stars had found ways to threaten humanity's home system directly. The war she thought she had left behind had followed her home. "What kind of capabilities are we talking about?" asked another veteran. Someone whose scarred hands spoke of direct combat experience with alien biotechnology. "Organic ships that can phase shift through normal space-time barriers," the admiral replied. "Combat organisms that adapt to human weapons in real time. Hive mind coordination that allows for tactical responses we've never encountered before. They've learned from every engagement with human forces and evolved countermeasures that render our standard tactics ineffective." The implications were staggering. Sarah remembered the alien bioships from her previous service, living vessels that combined advanced technology with biological adaptation. If the hegemony had developed new capabilities, it meant humanity faced threats that required veterans with experience fighting these organisms under extreme conditions. "Our intelligence suggests," the admiral continued, "that the hegemony has identified Earth as the source of human expansion and intends to eliminate our home world to prevent further colonial development. They see humanity as a contamination that must be contained before it spreads further among the stars." Knox stepped forward from his position along the wall. "Each of you has been selected not just for your combat experience, but for your proven ability to adapt to circumstances that push human endurance beyond normal limits. The upcoming operations will require skills that can only be developed through previous exposure to deep space combat against bioship opponents." Sarah raised her hand. "Sir, what about our civilian lives? Families, education, commitments we've made in normal society?" "Temporary arrangements will be made," the admiral replied. "Your civilian identities will be maintained through cover stories that explain extended absences. Family members with appropriate security clearances will be briefed on general circumstances. Educational institutions will receive explanations that protect both your academic standing and operational security." The words were professional and reassuring, but Sarah heard the subtext clearly. Their normal lives would be suspended indefinitely while they returned to service that could easily result in their deaths. The civilian futures they had built were being sacrificed for humanity's survival. "Ma'am," asked Starwing 5, a woman whose quiet demeanor hid extraordinary skill in bioship infiltration, "what's our mission timeline?" "Immediate," the admiral replied. "The hegemony fleet is currently 3 weeks out from Earth's outer defensive perimeter. Standard forces have been unable to slow their approach. Your team will deploy to intercept positions and engage using tactics that leverage your previous experience with bioship combat." 3 weeks. Sarah felt the weight of how quickly her normal life was ending. This morning she had been studying orbital mechanics and worrying about exam schedules. Now she was being asked to help defend Earth itself against alien forces that threatened human civilization. "One more thing," the admiral added, her voice taking on a more personal tone. "Each of you volunteered for deep space service knowing the risks involved. Each of you has already proven your commitment to humanity's expansion among the stars. What we're asking now is whether you're willing to make that commitment again, under circumstances that are more dangerous than anything you've previously faced." The briefing room fell silent as 12 veterans contemplated the choice between their normal lives and service that could determine humanity's survival. The tattoos they bore weren't just symbols of past achievement. They were marks that bound them to responsibilities that transcended personal desires for peace and normalcy. The decision came easier than Sarah had expected. Looking around the briefing room at the faces of veterans who had served alongside her in humanity's darkest hours, she realized that her normal life had always been temporary. The skills she had developed, the experiences that had shaped her, the knowledge of what humanity was capable of achieving among the stars, all of it had prepared her for this moment when everything she had fought to protect was threatened. "I'm in," she said simply, her voice carrying the quiet certainty of someone who had made peace with necessary sacrifice. Around the room, the other veterans nodded their agreement, not enthusiastic acceptance, but the resigned determination of people who understood their unique qualifications came with responsibilities that couldn't be abandoned when circumstances required their service. Admiral Morrison smiled grimly. "I expected nothing less from this group. Your commitment to humanity's survival has never been in question." She gestured toward the holographic display. Now let's discuss what you'll be facing out there. The star chart shifted, showing detailed intelligence about the approaching hegemony fleet. Bioships the size of small cities moved through space in formations that defied human understanding of tactical deployment. Organic vessels that pulsed with alien life surrounded larger structures that seemed to grow and adapt as they traveled. The enemy force consists of approximately 200 bioships organized around 12 queen vessels, the admiral explained. Each queen ship contains a local hive mind that coordinates tactical responses for its accompanying swarm. Our previous engagement suggests that disrupting queen ship coordination can cause temporary chaos among subsidiary vessels. Starwing 3 leaned forward, studying the display with professional interest. Ma'am, what's our force deployment? How many ships do we have available for this engagement? 18 heavy cruisers, 43 destroyers, and 6 experimental vessels incorporating technology recovered from previous bioship encounters, Morrison replied. Additionally, you'll have access to modified fighters designed specifically for bioship infiltration operations. Sarah felt her pulse quicken at the mention of infiltration fighters. These were specialized craft designed to penetrate bioship hulls and deploy personnel directly into alien vessel interiors. Piloting them required skills that few humans possessed: the ability to navigate organic structures while under fire from biomechanical defense systems. Our tactical approach, the admiral continued, relies on coordinated strikes against queen ship coordination centers, while secondary forces engage the general swarm. Your team will be responsible for the infiltration operations that target hive mind nodes. Knox stepped forward with additional briefing materials. Intelligence suggests the hegemony has developed new bioship variants specifically designed to counter human infiltration tactics. You'll be facing defensive systems that adapt to human presence in real time, organic structures that can reconfigure themselves to trap or eliminate intruders. The challenges were staggering, but Sarah found herself analyzing the tactical situation with the automatic responses of someone trained for exactly this type of operation. Bioship infiltration required not just piloting skill, but the ability to think and move like an organism, to understand alien psychology well enough to predict biomechanical responses. What about extraction protocols? Asked Starwing 5. Previous missions included predetermined evacuation procedures. Are we looking at similar arrangements? Morrison's expression darkened. This engagement is being classified as a terminal defense operation. Extraction protocols will be implemented when possible, but mission success takes priority over personnel recovery. The survival of Earth itself depends on disrupting this hegemony assault. The words confirmed what Sarah had suspected from the moment she saw the intelligence displays. This wasn't a standard military operation with measured risks and calculated outcomes. This was humanity's desperate attempt to prevent extinction, a mission where individual survival was secondary to species preservation. Ma'am, she said, what's our deployment timeline? 48 hours, Morrison replied. You'll undergo accelerated refresher training on current bioship countermeasures, briefings on new enemy capabilities, and integration with modified infiltration systems, then immediate deployment to intercept positions. Sarah thought about her aerospace engineering textbooks, still spread across the coffee shop table, where her normal life had ended just hours earlier. Her professors would receive explanations about family emergencies requiring extended absence. Her classmates would wonder what had happened to the quiet student who had seemed so dedicated to her studies. One final consideration, the admiral added. This operation will likely result in public exposure of humanity's expansion beyond Earth. The scale of the engagement, the proximity to our home system, the potential for debris or surviving alien vessels, all of it suggests that civilian populations will learn about the war we've been fighting among the stars. The implications were profound. For decades, humanity's expansion into space had been hidden from general knowledge, protected by classification systems that maintained the illusion that Mars represented the farthest human achievement. If this battle exposed the truth about interstellar travel and alien conflict, it would fundamentally change how humans understood their place in the universe. Sir, asked another veteran, how do we prepare civilian populations for that kind of revelation? We don't, Morrison replied bluntly. Our responsibility is preventing human extinction. How society adapts to learning about alien threats and interstellar warfare will be determined after we ensure there's a human society left to adapt. Knox distributed data tablets containing classified briefing materials. Study these tonight. Tomorrow you begin training that will prepare you for the most dangerous mission any human has ever attempted. The bioship variants you'll encounter have been specifically evolved to counter everything we've learned about fighting the hegemony. Sarah accepted her tablet, feeling the weight of information that would reshape her understanding of the current conflict. The war she thought she had left behind had evolved into something far more dangerous than anything she had previously faced. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Morrison concluded, you represent humanity's best hope for survival. Your previous service prepared you for this moment, when everything we've built among the stars depends on your willingness to face threats that push human capability beyond its known limits. History will remember what you accomplish in the next few weeks, assuming there's a human civilization left to record that history. The briefing ended, but Sarah remained seated, staring at the holographic display that showed alien forces approaching Earth. Tomorrow she would begin training for a mission that would likely end her life. Tonight was her last opportunity to say goodbye to the normal existence she had fought to build and would now sacrifice to protect humanity's future among the stars. 3 weeks later, Sarah floated in the pilot seat of her modified infiltration fighter, watching Earth grow larger in her viewport as the battle raged around her. The engagement had exceeded every worst-case scenario the military planners had developed. Hegemony bioships filled space around humanity's home system, their organic hulls pulsing with alien life as they engaged human defensive forces in combat that pushed both species to their limits. Her mission was simple in concept, impossible in execution: penetrate the hull of a queen ship, navigate through organic corridors filled with biomechanical defenders, and plant a quantum disruptor at the Hive Mind Coordination Center. Success would chaos among 20 bioships and create an opening for human forces to exploit. Failure would mean another step toward humanity's extinction. Starwing 7, you're clear for approach, came the voice of flight control, transmitted through quantum channels that the bioships couldn't intercept. Bioship defensive screens are down for 30 seconds. Window closes in 27-26. Sarah kicked her fighter into maximum acceleration, diving toward the massive organic hull that stretched for kilometers in every direction. The Queen ship was beautiful in its alien horror, a living vessel that combined advanced technology with biological evolution in ways that challenged human understanding of what was possible. Behind her, the battle for Earth's survival continued. Human starships engaged bioship swarms in three-dimensional combat that spanned millions of cubic kilometers. Explosions bloomed in space as conventional weapons met organic hulls, while beam weapons carved through alien tissue that regenerated damage faster than human forces could inflict it. Contact in 15 seconds, she announced, checking her equipment one final time. The quantum disruptor was the experimental weapon that would theoretically disrupt the bioelectrical patterns that maintained hive mind coordination. Theoretically, because it had never been tested against a queen ship under combat conditions. Her fighter struck the bioship hull at precisely the calculated angle, its specially designed penetrator systems boring through organic armor that tried to seal itself around the intrusion. Sarah felt the familiar sensation of entering an alien vessel, the way human technology interfaced with biomechanical systems that operated according to principles her species was only beginning to understand. Inside the queen ship, organic corridors pulsed with alien light. Biomechanical defenders swarmed toward her position, creatures that combined insect mobility with technological enhancements that made them deadly opponents in close combat. Sarah moved through the organic maze with the fluid precision of someone who had done this before, her training and experience guiding her through passages that shifted and reconfigured as the ship's immune system responded to her presence. The Hive Mind Center was located deep within the ship's core, protected by layers of organic armor and biomechanical guardians that had been specifically evolved to prevent exactly the kind of mission she was attempting. Each step forward required skills that pushed human capability beyond normal limits. The ability to think and move like an organism while maintaining human tactical awareness. Starwing 7, approaching target zone, she reported, knowing that her transmission might be the last communication anyone would receive from her position. Enemy defenses are heavy but manageable. Proceeding with primary mission. The coordination center was a living chamber filled with bioelectrical networks that pulsed with the thought patterns of the hive mind. Organic processors larger than her fighter computed tactical responses and coordinated the actions of 20 bioships through quantum entanglement that operated faster than human neural systems could comprehend. Sarah planted the quantum disruptor according to her training, watching as the device interfaced with alien technology in ways that human science barely understood. The weapon would either disrupt hive mind coordination or trigger defensive responses that would kill her instantly. There was no middle ground, no partial success that would allow for retreat and revised tactics. Device planted and armed, she announced. Beginning extraction sequence. The disruptor activated with a pulse that sent shockwaves through the organic structure around her. Bioelectrical networks flickered and died as quantum interference disrupted the coordination patterns that maintained hive mind function. Throughout the Queen ship, Sarah could feel the alien intelligence, struggling to maintain control over systems that were no longer responding to central commands. Her extraction was a running battle through corridors that convulsed with the ship's death throes. Biomechanical defenders attacked with desperate fury as their coordination systems failed, but their responses were no longer coordinated by central intelligence. Sarah fought her way back to her fighter through organic passages that were collapsing as the Queen ship's vital systems shut down. Starwing 7 to flight control, she transmitted as her fighter cleared the dying bioship's hull. Mission accomplished. Queen ship coordination is down. Repeat. Hive mind disruption successful. Around her, the battle situation changed dramatically as 20 bioships suddenly lost their coordinated responses. Human forces pressed their advantage, engaging swarm vessels that no longer operated with unified tactical intelligence. The tide of battle, which had been flowing toward humanity's defeat, shifted as coordination failures cascaded through the hegemony fleet. 6 hours later, the engagement was over. Humanity had achieved something unprecedented in the war against the hegemony, a decisive victory that forced alien forces to retreat from the Sol system. The cost had been enormous, but Earth survived, and with it, humanity's chance to continue expanding among the stars. Sarah floated in her fighter, watching Earth turn below her as recovery operations began. The battle had been witnessed by civilian populations who could no longer be shielded from the truth about humanity's expansion into space. News networks were already broadcasting images of alien bioships and human starships, forcing governments to acknowledge realities that had been classified for decades. Starwing 7, came Admiral Morrison's voice over the quantum channel. Outstanding work out there. Your mission was the turning point that allowed us to achieve victory. Thank you, ma'am, Sarah replied, feeling the weight of exhaustion and accomplishment. What happens now? Now, Morrison said, humanity begins the process of adapting to open knowledge about our expansion among the stars. The war with the hegemony will no longer be classified. Our defensive capabilities will become public knowledge, and veterans like you will be recognized for the service you've provided in protecting human civilization. Sarah looked down at the tattoo on her wrist, the asymmetrical wing that had started this journey. What had begun as mockery in a coffee shop had led to service that helped determine humanity's survival. The symbol that had marked her as different from her civilian classmates had ultimately demonstrated the extraordinary capabilities that humans could achieve when pushed beyond their normal limits. Ma'am, she said, I'd like to return to my education when possible. Aerospace engineering has some practical applications I'd like to explore. Morrison's laughter carried across the quantum channel. I think that can be arranged, Starwing 7. Something tells me humanity is going to need engineers who understand both human technology and alien bioships. Your unique qualifications might be exactly what we need for the next phase of expansion among the stars. Below them, Earth continued its eternal rotation, now protected by the knowledge that humanity possessed both the will and capability to defend itself against threats that existed beyond normal understanding. The wing tattoo on Sarah's wrist had proven to represent not just past achievement, but humanity's unlimited potential for courage and sacrifice when facing the unknown dangers that waited among the stars.